Wide receiver, that position with players displaying both grace, speed, also power all at once. They're the subject of today's episode, familia. Which ones are coming off season-ending injuries, and which ones are potentially have potentially troubling injury histories? All that and more, because bienvenidos and welcome to the Injury Prone Podcast. I'm Jorge Martin, and a mi lado, el doctor Edwin Porras. ¿Cómo estamos, compa?
We're good, man. Estamos listo. We're ready. Ready to talk some of these wide receivers. Some news is trickling in. Joe Burrow's hand has not been amputated yet. There's no scheduled surgery as of now. And Keaton Mitchell is going to be returning at some point eventually. And TJ Hawkinson is going to return, right? And all these guys are in the best shape of their life. And things are good in May, man. Things are good. Patrick Mahomes is apparently fat, so he's going to fall off the face of the planet. All these things that are happening. Lamar lost however many pounds. There's a lot of stuff that went down, compadre, since we last talked. And, we need to get to the crux of it because we know the important thing is a quarterback's weight in the month of May.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when, running is such a big part of Patrick Mahomes' game. So, because he runs so much. But, one guy who running is a big part of his game, and he had some news coming out about him, Kyren Williams. We talked about him during our two-part series on running backs. But now it's coming out. He's not going to participate in OTAs. It's with a foot issue that came out, and he's got some injury history with which I know raises some red flags with you, compa. We both know that Sean McVay isn't always very forthcoming with the truth, con la verdad. So what's the concern level here?
Yeah, I think that you can look at these like a couple of different ways, right? The reality is we don't know how the Rams will handle it. We don't know what the specific injury is, but the bottom line is, and I put this tweet out, I think it was like last October or something. And I put that you can go scroll through my Twitter timeline at FB Injury Doc. In October, I said, Kyren Williams is here for a good time, but he might not be here for a long time. He's got a very specific history of foot and ankle issues on both sides. Obviously, that Schefter, I don't know if you remember the beginning of the 22 season, that Schefter, nugget that he gave at the beginning of week one, where he said, I really think the Rams like Kyren Williams. And he wasn't wrong, but in that first game, Kyren Williams had a massive ankle injury. And so that never really came to fruition in that year. Then the following year, that's when we really started to see him take off. So here's the thing about Kyren Williams. I think most fantasy managers understand, especially after the Rams took old Blake Corum, that Kyren Williams is a bit of I don't want to call him a James Robinson type, right? That's a little far in terms of the archetype of how his career went up and then all of a sudden sunk down. Obviously, I think Kyren Williams is more talented. Kyren Williams has better opportunity. He's in a much better situation, but he could take a pretty massive hit. I don't want to over-exaggerate and overreact. I just joked about how nothing really matters in the month of May, which is true. But you can view this Kyren foot situation potentially as an opportunity in Dynasty specifically to get some value back, because I think that his value before the draft, I think, was the highest that it was going to be. Regardless, Blake Corum was going to take some work. We kind of talked about that in the last episode. But in terms of his foot and ankle history, I mean, we saw Leonard Fournette sort of fall out of the league. And he had a history of foot and ankle issues that he couldn't quite shake. So before he was at the age of 28, Leonard Fournette was totally Lombardi Lenny was totally out of the league. Could that have played a role? Yeah, probably. It probably did. So again, it's tough to really project a future, but you can say that when it comes to compared to his contemporaries, Kyren Williams is riskier than some other guys that were being drafted as high as he was before the draft.
Is his youth, does it play a part a little bit more? He's still kind of like in those prime years for running backs.
It can, right? Like he can push through things. He can heal a little faster. He can sort of get back on his feet more quickly, but it ends up being, again, it plays back to the dynasty issue. It really plays more so into longevity. He's probably not going to be like a Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's probably going to play until he's 31, 32, 33, right? And knock on wood, as long as he doesn't have a big injury. A guy like Kyren Williams, probably not going to happen. Guys with an injury history, specifically feet and ankle, man, that's not good. It's not something that I want to align myself with. Maybe if you're trying to go for a championship and you got Kyren Williams super late, I keep calling him Kyren William. I don't know why. Kyren Williams super late.
because
And maybe
he's one of one.
yeah, exactly. So maybe you got Kyren Williams and he's like on your dynasty squad. He's like your RB3, RB4. Oh, sure. Like ride that train until the cows come home. Right. But if for some reason he's on your dynasty squad, he's like your first or second best running back, then and you're trying to contend, I guess hold on to him. But otherwise, I'm trying to move him.
Yeah, and I tell you, doing zero RB builds so much on best ball drafts, I'm not building mine around Kyren Williams. I just not feeling comfortable. I think I'm going to wide receiver, or I'm pivoting over to like Saquon Barkley or Jonathan Taylor, those guys that are going in that similar range that I think have a little bit more predictability there. So, no, that was good. That was good. Kyren Williams, Guillermo, however we want to talk, Memo, however we want to call him. So, but yeah, let kind of keep an eye on him. We're going to keep an eye on him all summer long through training camp and kind of see what kind of like break through a little bit of the coach speak that we get from El Señor Sean McVay. So, compa. So now let's talk about the main event here. So we've got the wide receivers. So the last two episodes, I think the series has been great. We've been able to get through a bunch of quarterbacks in a 2-part series, running backs in a 2-part series. So this is going to be the first of 2 parts for our wide receivers. And we're going to another Guillermo, another Memo, another plural Williams, Mike Williams. Okay, coming off the ACL tear. Now he just signed with the New York Jets, who need pass catchers. They definitely added Malachi Corley, but he had his ACL surgery. After week 3, the surgery happened on October 25th. So I know you definitely like to keep an eye on the surgery date itself, but he's coming up on his age 30 season, and your 9-month mark is going to be late July, but kind of going to a new team, kind of like what's your level of kind of concern, thought process for Mike Williams?
Yeah, and I'm pulling up a tweet right now. I should have had it prepared, but again, I'm not the most professional podcaster. So when it comes to wide receivers and ACLs, there is a very small percentage of them that ever actually bounce back completely. And like you mentioned, Mike Williams is 30 years old. It doesn't really add up for him, right? So here's the stat that I put out last year. So these are for people who in general think that wide receivers come back in the second year after an ACL. So basically, after 2 years, right, what you see is since 2013, only 6 out of 36 wide receivers have actually improved in year 1, or in year 2, after an ACL compared to the year 1 post-op. In other words, they're the same guy after the surgery that they were in year 1. And what they were in year 1, it doesn't necessarily bode well for them either, right? So what I have there with that specific, when it comes to Mike Williams, is that they're here it is, right? More than half of wide receivers never return to even 90% of their pre-fantasy production. So I'll say that again. More than half of wide receivers never return to at least 90% of their pre-injury fantasy production.
That's
right. The other thing is, shout out to Matt Harmon, Reception Perception, love his work. A predictor of wide receivers bouncing back after an ACL in general, based on the data and that I've used from Matt's work, is that they have to have an 80% success rate against zone. Mike Williams is like, he's right there. He's at 78%, right? So it does all of the things. He's 30, exactly. He's 30 years old. He just moved teams. I hate to say it, but I'm just not. I mean, I don't guess I don't hate to say it, but I just don't really necessarily see Mike Williams being fantasy relevant from a perspective, even of what he was doing before, because this is going to be an uphill battle for him to be fantasy relevant.
You're not kidding. And especially with Garrett Wilson, he's going to eat up targets like crazy. So he's going to be a guy who's going to be averaging 9 to 10 targets a game. So it's going to be very clear. A lot of this is really dependent on Aaron Rodgers being healthy. So let's hope for that. We talked about him. If you guys missed that, check out the quarterback series that we did. We talked about Aaron Rodgers. It's so hard. Plus, there's been so much talk about that turf at MetLife Field in where the Jets and Giants play. How much is that real and how much is that a concern?
This could be an episode on itself. I think it's a good question, right? I don't think that it's a bad question. I know that there are some clinicians, docs, and PTs out there who take a hard stance against it and show some data, but really the data is pretty inconclusive. There is some data that you can project forward and say, well, yes, there are more injuries when it comes to turf. Players don't like the turf, but from a data perspective, it's like this, right? There's data. There's one for every paper that you see that says there are more injuries on turf. There's a paper saying there aren't more injuries on turf. And it also comes down to body region. Are you talking concussions, or are you talking ACL tears, or are you talking ankle sprains? There are so many different, and I hate to just say nothing by saying a lot of words, but really the data is inconclusive. When guys, and it really becomes a bias thing too, right? Because when guys get injured on grass, you don't hear any, and you don't hear any outrage about changing to turf, right? For some reason, turf has caught fire as like some nexus or something that is the reason and the cause for injuries. Guys, the bottom line, like we've talked about over and over and over again, the NFL injury rate is literally 100%. Every player in the NFL, if they play for the average amount of length, the injury rate is 100%. Guys get injured. Could you make incremental changes because their players are asking you to? Yeah, I think that would could create some good faith. But if we're having a conversation strictly on the data and the information that says, is turf better than grass? It's just not there, right? It's just not, it's inconclusive. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm saying the data shows, depending on what source you look at, that it's inconclusive.
And Mike Williams, he's going, getting back to him, underdog drafts. He's going off as the wide receiver 51, 105.8 overall. It's kind of like that point where you're starting to take some dart throws. It's like the 8th, 9th round. So, I mean, maybe. I mean, you're taking your bench, but I don't know. What you said about guys are going to be kind of like who they are year 1, year 2. That's something that's really sticking with me. So one guy, younger guy that we're going to talk about, Tank Dell. So he's coming back from a couple of injuries. One was the broken fibula that he had in December of last year. So had surgery on December 4th. Then he had a gunshot wound, which apparently came through clean. Gracias a Dios for that. But one of the things, he was back running routes at OTAs. How important was that?
It's important, right? Even running on air, once you hear a guy gets shot, which again, it's good that didn't end as poorly as it could have. That's fantastic. And he's coming off of the ankle, right? The ankle surgery. The fact that he's already running routes on air, that's a really good sign, right? That's a really good sign. I know last year, one of the misses that I had was Tony Pollard. I stand by the fact, and most PTs and docs, the Twitter docs, will stand by, that was kind of weird. Like, could it have been his ankle? Yeah, I mean, easily, right? That's the obvious answer. That's the obvious answer everybody wants to give, is that it was his ankle. And I know that he had that interview with Matt Harmon, who I mentioned earlier, and he said, "Oh, I didn't really feel like myself until week 10 to 12." That's not common, right? I mean, there's data that I cited over and over and over again that guys coming off of that ankle injury and surgery specifically, they tended to do just fine. They hit like 98% of their previous injury production. So he was sort of an outlier, but it happens, right? We play a game of thinking in bets, to quote the great Billy Walters, and we surely don't want to make the same mistake that we made with Pollard. But I just, again, like, especially considering he's a wide receiver, and he's a little smaller, impact injuries could be something that's more of a concern, not necessarily because of the previous injury, but just in general, maybe because of his size or, whatever the case may be, impact injuries. And we could have the same conversation about Devon Achane. Maybe contact injuries are something that are going to pile up for him a little bit more quickly. There's a little bit more, there's a little bit more risk with him. But at the same time, you also have to look at the other factors like Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs. I mean, shoot, even Joe Mixon, right? Like, there's Schultz. A lot of Dalton Schultz, the great Dalton Schultz, Jason Witten reincarnate. There are so many different variables going into this offense, and I hate it. I hate this line, and we joke about it, and everybody jokes about it all the time. But I think most Texans I like better in best ball.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at the three of them, I'm looking at Nico Collins. He's the guy who's been able to have a full season rapport with CJ Stroud. Tank Dell, though, there always seems to be something that CJ Stroud is talking about, how they're kind of compadres, came in as rookies. going to be very curious about what Stephon Diggs. Yeah, this is a very, very crowded room. So injury wise, anything you're looking at, benchmarks, warning signs that you're looking for with Dell when that we're going to be looking for in training camp?
No, I mean, it's basically full steam ahead at this point. He's already running routes on air. He's doing a lot of the aerobic work that you want to see him doing by now. I unless there's like a setback or for whatever reason, it's all, full steam ahead for him right now.
Perfecto. Okay, well, let's go to South Florida on this one. Tyreek Hill. So he kind of, incredible season, but in a sense, it was really a large chunk of the season because I think 2 of the last 3 seasons he's had ankle injuries that kind of that kind of cropped up. He got hurt on December 11th on Monday Night Football against Tennessee. He missed Week 14, so he tweaked his ankle. It looked ugly. I think we were kind of surprised that he came back when he did. But he had in the first 8 of the first 12 games, he had 100+ yards. He had none of them post-injury in the last few games. He's going into his age 30 season. Ankles, anybody who's sprained an ankle badly knows that they can happen. What's the level of concern about, injury history starting to become an issue with Tyreek Hill now that he's entering that age?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something you think about, but really it's more so of a soft tissue type thing. Is it a quad pull? Is it a hamstring pull? Stuff like that. Obviously, you don't love to see high ankle sprains, but those don't tend to carry over season to season. I mean, there are only a handful of cases since 2013 that I've been tracking that have actually sprained the exact same ankle in the exact same way, in the exact same location. So that's not necessarily a concern. And you also have to consider Tyreek Hill's a freak, right? Like his nickname's literally the freak. So in a similar way, in a similar vein to Christian McCaffrey being a freak at a different position, I think we're going to be seeing Tyreek Hill do things. I don't want to like jinx the guy, right? And this is again assuming health, which again you can't always assume health. But I mean, shoot, dude, Deshaun Jackson was signing contracts in his like 35, 36-year-old season, right? And I think we're going to see similar things from Tyreek Hill. I think he'll keep cashing those checks until at least that time. So I wouldn't be necessarily too concerned for him quite yet.
No, I mean, he's got that stop start that is really just makes him a unicorn. I mean, he's incredible. He's going off at the number 3, the wide receiver 2. CeeDee Lamb's going ahead of him in underdog drafts. So you've got, he's not, they're right there neck and neck. A lot of people are keeping an eye on that week 17 where the Dolphins have to go up to Cleveland and play that great defense. So that's, maybe that's something to keep an eye on. But I think wheels up especially the last 2 years, that offense has just been absolutely electric. Just some, extraordinary games. And this guy is the one who is so important to that offense. Jalen Waddle, I know we'll talk about him in a later episode because he kind of had a few things going on last year. But yeah, I love that you're still that they're full speed ahead on him. So closing out, we got our last one. We're going up to New England. Kendrick Bourne, another player who's coming off an ACL injury, and his surgery was back mid-November. So that puts him mid-August at that 9-month mark. But he's the veteran in the group, but they drafted 2 receivers in there. They've got 2 new quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissett, Drake May. When does Drake May get to play? New coaching staff. Compa, this one, me hace poquita cosa. I don't know if I want to hear your injury assessment, and then we could talk about the kind of like the playing situation, the ecosystem, as our amigo Matt Harmon likes to talk about.
Yeah, when it comes to Kendrick Bourne, that first of all, like you said, there's a lot of like room in that offense for somebody to emerge. And Kendrick Bourne can be one of those guys, right? I didn't know that he was already 29. I guess that makes sense. He's been in the league for a while. But yeah, surgery was in November, like you said. That would make his return in mid-August very plausible. I do think that he can do it, assuming that it's a clean ACL, which there isn't much reporting on that specifically, but I do think it's a clean ACL. So I think that he could do it, right? I don't think it's going to be a big deal for him to come back, but is he going to be able to actually, return and be successful, that's another question in and of itself. But a very similar conversation that we had with Mike Williams was, again, dude turns 29. He's coming off an ACL. The environment is going to be, who knows, right? Drake May, we know that he likes to throw the YOLO balls every now and then, so that could turn into something. But again, this becomes sort of a compounding, similar situation to Mike Williams, where like there's so much ambiguity there. If it were a running backfield, it's different, right? We know that from JJ Zacharyason's work. It'd be different, but there's so much ambiguity here. And I think the upside is generally capped anyway. So I'm just not taking any shots on Kendrick Bourne. I mean, I guess if he like goes late enough, right? We're talking 9th, 10th, 11th round. Okay, fine. But I don't know necessarily where he's going. Oh, it's right here. You said it. You literally said wide receiver 99, I guess, right? But I don't expect
that's last a lot. Round. That's last round dart throwing.
I wouldn't expect a lot from him.
Yeah, I mean it's just so much. I mean, I almost feel like he's going to be like Crash Davis to the younger receivers, and just kind of be. Sorry to age myself on that one, familia, but Bull Durham never is ageless. But no, it's one of those things. They added Javon Baker, they added Jalen Polk, so that those guys are the future at that position with Drake May. So we're he's a dart throw if you want, but I don't know if I want to take a dart throw on a guy who's coming off an injury. So, yeah. All right, compa, let's do a little cultura class. So I think you guys saw a little bit over on Twitter recently. I posted some photos of my prima Felicia's wedding, some party photos. I didn't get a good video of us doing suavecito. I may still post it because we've been drinking and camera angles are funny that way when you get a big group of Latinos singing a fun song. But hey, compa, I never asked you, when you and Holly got married, did you have any Porras, familiar Porras traditions that kind of came through?
Maybe not like specific to my family, but specific to Mexican culture for sure. So my dad and my tío, they made some chile rojo, and they made my mom and my tías made arroz and frijoles, and we had bizcochos for dinner. And to this day, I mean, my anniversary just passed. And to this day, my wedding 6 years later, people will still bring up like, oh, dude, the food at your wedding was so good. And I'm like, I know. We were the last ones. And this was a little poetic, right? Like our good friends from college, they continue to be our good friends to this day. It was like, and it's still an emotional moment for me to look back, because those friends, it was, 3, 4, or 5 of us. We were we shut the place down, right? We were the last ones there when the band was, basically putting their stuff away. We were playing music. Some of my friends were eating the arroz straight out of the cacerola, just eating it, scooping it. Of course, some adult beverages had been consumed, but no, it was a good time. And that's really what I had. That was sort of my experience at my wedding that stands out.
Oh man, I tell you, that is it's special. I mean, it's special. I mean, at my prima's wedding, we all gathered around the bride. She actually made sure my primo Nico and I, she said, she grabbed us, took us to the DJ and said, suavecito, these guys are in charge, so you make sure, because she wanted that moment. She wanted that moment to feel like a princess, and it was awesome. It was absolutely,
I love it.
Great
ones.
And definitely played some mariachi. The DJ played some mariachi music and some great stuff. At our wedding, I think some of my favorite moments were with some of my primos and my tios and my tias. I mean, just sitting there talking. I mean, literally like having like the 2-minute conversations about when we grew up, and like here we are now, and it's just special, Oh, familia weddings are just nothing better. But and you know what? Yeah, when you get great food, when your friends are eating the arroz right out of the cazuela, muy bien, pegándole. All right, compa, now it's time for us to pegándole out of here. Everybody, make sure you're following the Injury Prone podcast on YouTube. Our numbers we've had a couple of episodes recently that really did great. I think there's some new people who are joining us. So please, por favor, welcome in, bienvenidos. You're going to have a good time. You're going to learn so much. We've gotten some great comments in the chat, so make sure you're in there. Also, make sure you're following Edwin at FB Injury Doc on Twitter, also at Pro Athlete PT on all the socials. Make sure you're liking all those because my daughter's making those. So
that's right. Yeah. And if you're in the Denver area and you're an athlete or you know an athlete and they need physical therapy and they've tried everything and they've tried other physical therapists and they've been to places in the area and haven't gotten better, haven't seen results, or haven't even been sent to physical therapy. This is some of the stuff I'm running into. Come on down, Google Pro Athlete PT. You'll see all the reviews on there. Hopefully they speak for themselves, and come see me.
He's going to take care of you. I already made. And also make sure to check out the Pro Athlete Physical Therapy podcast. So I already recommended it to someone I've been doing some work with, whose son is a young pitcher. So I'm like, I keep telling him rest. Make sure he's getting his proper rest. So okay, closing it out. I'm Jorge Martin 17. You guys know where to follow us. It's Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy. If you're grilling and you're grilling some carne asada, salud, enjoy the cervezas. Muchas gracias for joining us. Otra vez, salud.